Here's an analysis on the Modern Warfare 2 beta so far from the perspective of someone who prefers to snipe for those of you that care. Bear in mind that this is a beta and things may change, as well as this stems from my experience. However, I'm sure some of you can relate to some of the problems I've encountered as well as some of the benefits. You can also think of this as a review of the content we have been presented with multiplayer-wise. Side note, I am a product of my environment, so I too may take part in some of the playstyles I may mention that I talk poorly of, such as bunny hopping around corners. Side note part 2, one small grievance I have is how play of the games aren't fully functional, which doesn't really matter too much to get a whole section of the video partitioned to it. So yeah, I mean, it's a beta. Stuff's not going to work properly, and hopefully it'll be fixed in the full game. So to get started off, probably the biggest problem I have with the beta, which can be connected to almost every other problem I have, is the footsteps. They're just too loud. Everything you run on sounds like you're slamming your feet as hard as you can on the ground. And you may say to yourself, doesn't that benefit everyone? Like, wouldn't I prefer loud footsteps so I could hear enemies coming up on me? Which for the most part it can, but it also raises multiple problems, with problem one being that it promotes what I'd like to call pseudo camping. When I think of actual camping, I think of someone that just sits in a room the entire game and doesn't leave it, or sits in a corner and like never explores the rest of the map, just waiting for people to come into that room. I don't know if there's an actual term for what I refer to as pseudo camping, but essentially what it means is someone who holds a corner intently because they can hear your footsteps from halfway across the map. They're not necessarily camping there, but they're waiting for you to round the corner. Meanwhile, you have no idea that they're there because they are staying still. And here's an example of what I'm talking about. Don't get me wrong, technically this is a smart way to play, and I mean, like, you know, self-preservation, you don't want people to know where you're at, but you know where they're at. It kind of makes sense, but that kind of extends to like camping in general. Camping is probably the smartest way to play because it drastically reduces the likelihood of you getting killed while increasing the likelihood that you kill other people, because they just, most of the time, they don't know you're there until of course people start to catch on to the fact that you're camping in a building in that specific game. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I wait for people to come around corners too when I hear their footsteps, because it is the natural way of going about things, is that if you hear someone, you want to get the jump on them because that increases your chances of killing them. So I do think that they should reduce the sound of footsteps just to get people to start rounding corners and going head on into battle and finding more conflicts. I can't tell you how many times I've run around a corner and gotten shot by someone around that corner that was just holding that angle so intently, but I had no clue that they were there because they made no footsteps prior. The second issue that arises from loud footsteps is, as a sniper, which is what I primarily do, I tend to rely on having the jump on enemies, since being able to scope in and get my shot off before they start firing drastically increases my chances of killing them. With loud footsteps, the pseudo camping makes rounding corners even worse for a sniper, since it's much easier to jump and spray with an SMG than it is to hit a jumping quickscope on someone you don't even know is present around the corner. But that's just my sniper bias coming into play. Whenever I do use a regular gun, it definitely isn't as apparent. And I have to admit, it is really satisfying to kill someone that was camping around a corner, so there's that. My next grievance is the time to kill in the beta. I feel like time to kill is something that's often talked about, especially in the Warzone community, since you want to build the best weapon you can for time to kill. But in the Modern Warfare 2 beta, the time to kill is just incredibly short. I feel like headshots do more damage than they've ever done, which, I mean, realistically makes sense. I feel like headshots should reward more damage, especially since aiming for the head is a bit riskier than aiming for their body, as well as, you know, killing those stupid head glitchers that you find in every map. It also seems like they tried to combat the low time to kill with making a lot of the weapons have a larger bullet spread when aiming down sights. Specifically talking about the M4, I feel like the spread is crazy. And I'm not even really talking about the recoil, I'm just talking about the bullets. Sometimes they just magically seem to float around the head, and it seems like a game of RNG whenever you're shooting someone at range. Or maybe I'm just fucking garbage, who knows. However, the time to kill of regular guns is especially prevalent for snipers, since the time to kill directly affects how long a sniper has to kill the enemy. If I die in 3 bullets instead of 5, that could be the difference between scoping in, getting my shot off, or dying before I can even do that, as well as even getting a second shot off if I missed my first shot, or if I hit mark the shot, which directly leads me into my next problem, getting hit markers with the sniper class. I have a feeling that the Lockwood isn't supposed to be the next car or Pellington, it's just the choice we're given in the beta. mainly because it has an incredibly fast fire rate and the scope is more of an ACOG and not really a sniper scope per se. So I'm hoping that we get a better quickscoping rifle in the full game. However, for now, the Lockwood is the king of Hitmarkers. I've lost many a clip to Hitmarkers, which, yeah, skill issue, aim higher, hit headshots, you suck. But it's tough when everyone follows the bunny hop meta where they can't help but spamming their jump button around corners or whenever they so much as get a glimpse of an enemy. Probably my least favorite evolution of COD players, especially since it just makes me hit their legs and hit mark them even more. But that's just the sniper complaining. But I mean, to be fair, the Lockwood doesn't hit mark as much as I imagined it would for how fast it fires. If you get a chest shot, you're almost guaranteed to kill them, but those arm shots and those leg shots are killing me. Moving on. Spawns are a hot topic of COD games, and it feels like with each passing game, the spawns seem to never really get better. Maybe it's from the rapid player growth with players getting better and moving around more and covering more of the map, so finding a suitable spawn far away from every enemy is challenging. But it's been more than a few times that I've spawned directly into an enemy's line of fire, or I've had people spawn in mine. It's not terrible, it doesn't have every game, but some maps on Domination are terrible for spawning in on. Speaking of maps, for the most part, they feel alright. Speaking strictly of the 6v6 maps, 3 out of 4 of them I'd call good maps, which is funny because those 3 maps vaguely remind me of past maps from the most recent Call of Duty. However, the 4th map, called Valderas Museum, feels like a terrible map to play on. The middle of the map is much too open, there are way too many head glitch spots, and you can get shot from nearly every angle in multiple spots. This obviously comes down to preference for the most part, since I'm not a map designer and I don't know in the ins and outs of map design and how it works. However, I can strongly say that Valderas is the weakest map, in my opinion, of course. It just doesn't feel good to play on at all. Also, some of the loudest footsteps are present on this map with the constant wood flooring. Now on to one of the most controversial intentional changes, which was the removal of slide canceling. This didn't affect me much since I didn't really slide cancel all too often. However, on top of removing slide canceling, they made sliding almost worthless. At the start of your slide, you're locked out of almost every action, not just the ability to cancel. You can't even hip fire your gun, essentially making you a sitting duck if you were trying to just create a different angle by peeking a corner from a slide. The only real benefit to sliding now is crossing short distances from cover to cover, which I guess was probably the intended mechanic from the start, but sliding is almost useless now because of the change. And for the most part, those are most of the problems I have with the beta. I went through them pretty fast, so if you want to leave a comment and tell me your problems or call me fucking crazy and call me a sniping fiend that only cares about the sniper problems, then let me know. I'll be happy to read them and interact with you. However, I do have some positives that I wanted to include, just so you know, it's not a completely negative video. And even then, I don't want this to be a negative video. I just want it to be getting my problems out and seeing if anyone else agrees with me. The positives are a little more broad. It's a Call of Duty game, so they pretty much have the base formula down by now. The game plays well. It crashes every now and then for PC players, but it's a beta, so that's bound to happen. The graphics are nice, the weapon balance is alright. The whole game as a whole is good, probably better than Vanguard at this stage, but of course it's easier to point out problems than it is to point out good things about a game, because when things are done right, you almost never notice them because they don't make themselves apparent to you. So overall, it's a good game. I'd recommend it. I've already pre-ordered it, so I'm going to be looking forward to playing it and hitting some clips on it when it releases. Let me know your thoughts on the points I brought up. Am I a crazy idiot? Am I just a bozo sniper complaining about stuff that nobody else has problems with? Or do my problems hold some sort of merit in the community? I'll most likely be making more COD vids, especially when the game releases, so sub to me if you're interested, and thanks for watching. I appreciate it.
Mink, mink, mink.